If you hate it, start doing that. Putting yourself in positions to where you're uncomfortable. And I'm talking about things that you need to be doing, not things that you shouldn't be doing. But if it's something you know you need to do and you're not doing it or you don't want to do it, then you need to do it twice. You put it on your calendar, do it twice. And it's hard. And it's a mind game. It's all a mind game. All of life is a mind game.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Life Inner Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Life Inner Show, we help people make more, work less, and live awesome, amazing, abundant lives that they love. I am joined by Polish Peter as my co-host. What's up, dude?
Did you just say Pol? There was a
I was
tripping
going
up
to say
over there.
polish. I was going to say polish, but I decided to say Polish.
I am very polished, though. Yes, that's true. In fact, when I was learning English, I was trying to figure out my Polish or polish. So I don't know if you can tell. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is sexier today, right? A little bit deeper, sexier, right?
Did you get a new microphone?
No, I went to one of my favorite teams of all time, Red Wings. I went to the game last night, and I screamed my lungs off. Cheering them on and all that kind of stuff. So now that's,
So that's what you have to do daily is just like to have I mean, most men just do this through testosterone, but that's fine if you don't have that. And you can just scream every night and you'll sound more masculine. I love it, man. It sounds good.
I am not going to reply to that. By the way, it's that the testosterone doesn't include having hair, because I think that's part of it, right?
Well, yeah. Well, so dude, speaking of testosterone, have you, looks like you've been working out, bro.
Yeah, bro. I am working out. I love it, man. So, it's like a habit, man. I love going back to the gym.
Well, and speaking of working out, dude, we got Brian Trippe on the episode today. So Brian, we've known for a while, through Life and Air, and he's down in Alabama. And here's a guy who really, I love his story as far as what he's chosen to do when faced with a really life-altering, event that affected him negatively. And he chose to kind of take the high road in terms of, how is he going to deal with this? Like, how does he get past it? How does he move on? And what we're referring to specifically is he really turned to being active physically.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I want you guys to listen to in this particular episode is, for him, something traumatic happened. And I don't know if you have listener right now, have something traumatic happen to your life or you're going through it right now. If that is the case, this is a really good episode for you to listen. Not only for that, but also for the perspective of looking at maybe you have some shoulds in your life. I should do this, should do that, should do this. And how I make it a must, you know? The must that I go and do this, because some of the things that he talks about is like, he talks about swimming. He hates swimming, but he keeps doing it every day. How does he do that? Right. So those things. And then at the end of the episode, I asked him a couple of questions. So check those out. And I think it'll be beneficial for anybody who's listening on this particular episode.
Yeah. Dude, great episode. Lots to learn here. Lots of gold nuggets. Here's our episode with Brian Trippe. Brian, what's up, brother? Great having you on the show, man.
I'm honored to be here, guys. Been following along with Life and Air for many, many, many years. Big fan. Grateful for the opportunity.
Dude, wow, Peter. I feel like this is awesome, man. We're getting some recognition here. This is fantastic.
Well, yeah. But I mean, it depends who he's talking about, actually. I don't know if it's me or you, or maybe it's just
Life
like I have to deal with you too and just come here and I have no other choice.
Right. Well, dude, listen, man. So the first time I met you in person was at the Get a Life Getaway in Birmingham. I had spoken to your group, and you're running groups. Now you're into I know you're into multiple things right now, and we'll get into that later. But the reason I wanted to have you on the show, man, is because we're friends on Facebook, and your stuff pops up in my news feed occasionally, and I saw it. What started off as I thought was just kind of like a little. Yeah, Brian's going to kind of start getting in shape and start working out. And then all of a sudden I see it's the next thing and the next thing. And all of a sudden, then now you're actually doing like Ironman, like literally. And by the way, you're going to have to describe for people who have no idea what this is, Ironman triathletes. And you are now preparing for something even further and beyond that I can't even comprehend physically as being possible. And so tell people, man, first of all, I don't know your full history as a child and growing up. But when we first met, man, I did not get the impression that you were some like ultra athlete. And this is exactly kind of what you've turned into, although it probably maybe doesn't seem that way. So tell people like what it is you're into now and how you even got to this position.
That is so huge. I don't even know. I don't even know where to start with that question. It's so the magnitude of it. I guess that's such a big question.
Were you so what inspired you to start this kind of training?
All right. So I had a traumatic life experience, and in that moment of the first couple of months of just trying to even process this, I had a choice to make, and the choice was, what do I have a lot of time on my hands first and foremost, and what do I do for my mental health, for my mental stability? What do I do in this moment? Do I, people turn to drugs, people turn to alcohol, people turn to, other just women, or, just doing the crazy stuff. And I knew I've had enough life experience to know that I'm not interested in doing anything toxic to myself, mainly because of my kids and really little kids. And and I kept asking myself, what can I do because I can't sit here in the house. I can't just sit here and just be depressed and, just from my mental stability alone, it's like, I've got to do something or else something bad could happen. So it's getting around other people, other like-minded people, just being open and honest, going to counseling, things like that. And just one day, I weigh about 215, almost 220 pounds as someone who's 5'8". That's obese by most standards. And this was, this is this is right before the pandemic. This is like January, February of 2020, right before the pandemic hits. And it's like, you know what? Let's go try to run a mile. It literally started with, I'm going to go down to the track. The track's right over here. This is a track, by the way. 17 years prior, I was running and I was in shape. I'm no athlete, but I was in shape, and I used to run a lot. I coached college basketball, and I used to be somewhat athletic, somewhat coordinated, but this is 17 years ago. I hadn't run a mile in 17 years, not even 1 mile. So I'm 40 pounds overweight, and I go out and I try to run a mile, and I don't make it. I can't run the whole mile. And it takes me about 12 minutes to run/walk a mile. And the next day I took a day off. I think I was really sore. I was really sore from running 1 mile, by the way.
Your body is like, what are you doing to me?
Run/walking 1 mile, I was sore.
Yeah.
So I go out and do it again. A couple of days later, I started hiking. I went on a hike, like a 4-mile hike, and it killed me. 4 miles killed me. It was like 3 hours. It took me 3 hours to do it. Then I go out and do another hike like a week later, and I got lost. It was supposed to be a 3 or 4 mile hike. It ended up being an 8-mile hike because I got completely lost. And that was dead. That was like a week. So it was just this progression of, to answer your question, I've got all this time on my hands. I can be productive or I can be stupid. And I decided to try to be productive. I needed to get back in shape. I kept saying it forever and ever and ever. I literally, like for years, I would look in the mirror, I'd get on the scale, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so fat. I would say it every day. And I never did anything about it.
Right.
But I was disgusted by it. So once I kind of started doing this for about a month, it almost became like an obsession. Like because I got to get out of the house. And because I knew every time I take a day off from like running or take a day off from like doing something active outside, I was getting massively depressed. I was just in a bad mental state, a bad mental place. So it's like, I got to get out of the house. And I started hiking. That was the big thing. Cause that's one of those things where for me, my brain won't shut off. It'll keep going and going and going and going and going and I'm an idea guy. I'm a visionary. And I'm just like, what if this? And what if this? I'm playing conversations in my head. And it's ridiculous. My brain is insane. And I think all of us are kind of there a little bit.
There's like 14 people in there.
Maybe not even, maybe way more than that. So I'm going on these hikes and they're lasting hours. And it's just, and I don't have music. I don't have headphones in. It's just me and a trail. And I found it takes about 4 or 5 hours for stuff to start quieting down, for me to be able to take a breath, and for me to be able to get some mental clarity of just, instead of acting out emotionally. Somebody sends you a text or gives you some news or some bad news you don't want to hear, or somebody tells you something really tough that you don't want to hear. I play all that through in my mind, and then I shut it down. And then it's just, I can take a breath and I can think rationally about how I want to respond to this now. And it just that's how it started. And it's been the most incredible exercise in patience, self-awareness. I feel like I'm a 1,000,000% a better father. I know I'm going to be a better husband one day because of this. I'm just a better human being overall, just because I've allowed all the immediate emotions, the immediate anger or whatever it might be, to just, hey, let's just think about this rationally. And it all came through hiking. And then it just, just progressed from there. It's been 2.5 years of doing that. It progressed from there. Yeah. I just did a full Ironman. And by the way, just let me throw this out there before you ask the next question. I would not have done that. The Ironman wouldn't even have been something that would have crossed my mind at all if it hadn't have been for Chuck Bauman. Years and years and years ago, he went through something very similar that I went through. And I remember his story. And his story is, he did a half Ironman, and it was just to replace a lot of the stuff that, it could have been negative, but he ended up doing positive things. And that's where the whole Ironman thing even came from, is from Chuck. And I spoke with Chuck probably a month before he passed away. And he told me, he's like, man, I remember the first time I ever met you, man, you were messed up. And I didn't want to say anything. I didn't feel like it was my place to say anything. I didn't really know you, but just to see where you were and where you are today, I'm just so fortunate and thankful to have known him and to have had that conversation with him before he passed. But again, it comes back to Life in Air, Steve Cook, Jason, Peter, you guys, what you guys have been able to do through this organization it's not just business. And I got really messed up and thought that by being a provider, being a man, being a provider, I had to go out and just accomplish all these things and do all these things so that, but it's not true. And it took me losing pretty much everything in order to really realize that. And I just hope, people that might be watching this, that they might be in a similar situation. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to go through all this loss in order to have the realization that there's more to life than just trying to conquer business.
Man, that's powerful. And I want to stop there for a minute and unpack that, and also acknowledge there's a whole bunch of questions I have from the earlier section as well. But if you were to go back now, knowing what you know now, do you think in particular there are certain aspects that you could identify as like that is one thing I would have done differently, or this is one thing that I wouldn't have done? Like, are there a couple small things or big things that you can tangibly point a finger to and say, hey, these were like disproportionately contributing to the tragedy that I went through and the mistakes I made?
Yes, there are, and I'll share a couple of those things, but I also know that for me and my personality, a lot of the stuff, I mean, this is all me talking now and looking back on it, but not really understanding it in the moment. But I feel like I had to go through that in order to be who I am today and what I've become today and the growth that I've gone through. I feel like for me, I needed that. I needed the kick in the butt. But you know, practically speaking, putting my priorities in order, understanding what is true. Like, I think a lot of people say that, you know, my family's most important, but when you actually look at their calendar, it's not true.
Yeah.
You look at their money, you look at their bank account, it's not true. You know, so it's like, if your family is the most important thing, then they should have most of your time and most of your money should go towards that. But my priorities were completely messed up. It wasn't even priority, I guess. I think it was a false, misleading belief system that I had, that I felt like I had to be a certain thing, I'm not sure, but just to answer the question, it's more for me, I always said I'm doing this for my family, but I was never there.
Yep.
So my wife left in December of 2019. That year, that calendar year, 2019, from January to December, I traveled 25 times and I spoke 24 different places without my family being there. I got on a plane, left, came home. I spoke 24 different places, different cities. I mean, are your priorities really where you say they are? Are you really doing that for your family? You know, so looking back on that now, it's pretty clear. In the moment, it wasn't. I thought I was doing it for my family.
Man, you know, it's so bizarre because we see people, and we hear, by the way, man, I think, and I certainly don't want to stereotype here, but I think, you know, especially I hear this a lot in men. I hear it in women too. And sometimes what I see is like saying it's for your family. And I'm not saying this is your situation, but like certainly I see this where people say it's for their family and maybe somewhere in there it is. But before that is someone that struggles with a sense of accomplishment and they want to feel like their identity and their value of being successful. And it's in a way kind of for them, but yeah, my family's going to benefit from me being successful too. It's a tangent of a benefit. It's not the main benefit. The main reason is us. Like we are, and entrepreneurs, business owners, we struggle with this because we're go-getters. We like to kill it and drag it home and eat it. And I think it's so easy to get caught up with that, man.
What are you dragging home?
Dude, so anything, man. Like you kill what you eat kind of thing, you know? And I think it's just, but it's much more noble to say, you know, I'm doing it for my family. And yeah, maybe your family can benefit, but like, I think it's very, very common that, you know, for this to happen. You know, I see a lot like on Facebook, for instance, you know, in people's description of who they are, it'll say like father or mother first, and then, you know, business like at the end. But I look at I know them, and I'm like, that is not at all the order of priorities that you're showing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, you know, when you're talking about your story and what you were just sharing with us, I mean, I see myself back in 2010, 2011. That's where I was, you know. And so I feel for what you've gone through and how you know, I mean, it's tough. It's not an easy situation and place to go through. And yet, I love how you answer the question because, you know, if you could go back, would you change anything, whatever? And you see the differences that you could have made, but at the same time, you're talking and saying, listen, I needed to go to that place. Because what ended up happening, what I was hearing from what you were sharing, is a lot of the shoulds that you were talking about became a must. As sucky as it sounds, right? Because of the fact that you had to go through a tough place. For some of us, it's that should finally becomes a must. And when that thing becomes a must, whatever it is, all of a sudden, there's nothing that's going to stop you, right? Because you probably, think about it, when you were sharing about going out on a track or hiking and you're 40 pounds overweight, how many times did your brain say, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing this? And your body, right?
Every time.
the why was pushing, right? The why I need to change this, and that this is a must. That something's got to change here. That kind of stuff, right?
Probably. I don't think I wasn't really thinking about that though. I wasn't really, I gotta do this. It was more like, I gotta get out of the house. I'm going crazy. I'm going to, like, something bad could happen.
So I want to touch, man, on something you said earlier that really struck me. You said you basically had a decision to make. You're depressed. You just went through tragedy, and you can either do something negative that's going to harm you and something destructive and get down that path, right? Or you can do something kind of positive. And I'm curious, like, and I don't know if there's anything conscious here you can relay to us, but like, I'm curious about that because I think a lot of people choose the wrong path. Like when they are under stress or when something bad happens in their life, they go down the other path, right? They're doing the drinking, maybe drugs or you know, unproductive, damaging things. Like, how do you think you made that decision? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I've been around long enough to see the other side of it. And I could touch on this earlier, but like every time I had like a negative thought about, first of all, I stopped drinking. And not that I drank a lot anyway, but I just completely cut it out of my life, like almost immediately. So that wasn't even really, it's not even something I even enjoy to do. So I stopped doing that. And I've never touched a drug. Like the drugs still scare that. I don't even take like NyQuil is the hardest thing I would ever take. And
better slow down with the NyQuil, bro.
Yeah, I know. But that's like even like I remember having knee surgery one time years and years ago, and I didn't take the pain. I took the pain medication one time, and I'm like, I don't like the way this makes. I'm too much of a control freak for drugs. Absolutely. So I've never done anything like that, and that scares the heck out of me. But even like the thoughts of even just sitting around and just like, I don't watch TV, but just sitting around and just moping, it just made me feel blah. But to answer the actual question, my kids really were a big driver in all this, a big motivating force for me. Anytime I thought that, you know, there might be something that it was stupid for me to do. First of all, I'm kind of in the public eye here locally. So what can I really do? You know, I fear embarrassment more than anything. So I'm not, and I've got my kids. So what can that was probably why I'm just, you know, I'm just hyper focused on them. And I know if I do something stupid, it's going to affect them, my relationship with them, or
that's
maybe even me
though.
possibly even seeing them.
Right. Well, that's valuable because I think someone who might be in a similar situation can start to look at those other things and the consequences, and maybe it will help steer them in the right direction towards, you know, a productive, empowering choice versus something that's going to get them in trouble and they're going to regret. So what I'm hearing, like, it starts with the hikes and then you just start getting really kind of like, you know, I don't want to say necessarily addicted to the feeling, but it sounds like it kind of was something that was like really euphoric for you that just you absolutely loved.
I started taking trips, you know, I started going places, and so I've got a lot of friends in the Phoenix area, and someone who mentioned, you know, the Grand Canyon, and it's something I've like ever since I was a little kid. I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to see the Grand Canyon. Oh my, like it just, to me, it's like bucket list type of stuff. I gotta go see the Grand Canyon. I've got all this time on my hands. I know people out there. Somebody wants to do a hike with me out there. Let's go. So that was like May of 2020. So very shortly after all this stuff. Go out there, and it was like, this is I still think it's the greatest place on earth. It's the coolest thing I've ever done, coolest thing I've ever seen. And I wanted to do rim to rim, you know, go from one side of the canyon to the other side of the canyon. And, you know, I met some people up there, and we ended up not doing it. We ended up going from, you know, the rim to the river because I had to see the Colorado River. I had to go over the bridge, and it was just so surreal. And then we went back up. That was over 20 miles with all that elevation. It was like 55 or maybe 6,000 feet of elevation gain going back up. And it took like all day because I wasn't in great shape or anything. And we met somebody. I went on a hike with somebody there, and I met someone who was doing rim to river to rim, and he was running it. I'm like, what are you doing? You're running this thing? Are you crazy? And he's just telling me about all this stuff that he's done. I'm like, I want to do that. It's just like, I want to do that. And I kept asking myself, I kept like looking at all these like little things, like how much would it cost to go to the Grand Canyon and hike the Grand Canyon and come home from Birmingham? How much would that cost with airfare, hotel, what food, gas, whatever? How much would that cost me? Car, all the whole thing. It ended up costing me about, because I carpooled with somebody, it ended up costing me less than $1,000 to fly to Phoenix, go to the Grand Canyon, hike the Grand Canyon, and come home. Less than $1,000. And I'm like, I spent less than $1,000 doing this. So I started looking at all these trips, get on Southwest. I'm finding these flights, these round trip flights for like less than $100. And I'm like, man. So I ended up 2020, I don't have my kids. I only have my kids a certain amount of time. What am I going to do with all this time in my hands? That's really how the hiking stuff kind of took off, is I want to go see all these places. I went and saw Mount Rushmore, did a trip out to South Dakota. I did the Tahoe Rim Trail. I went up to the Northeast, 7 states in the Northeast. I'm climbing all these high points, the highest points in every state. Like I took a trip out to Tucson, Arizona, and did a bunch of hikes out there. Meanwhile, I got in my car and have driven all around pretty much everywhere east of the Mississippi River. I've driven everywhere. Took my kids to northern Minnesota on a road trip from Birmingham, which is 50 hours, by the way, in the car. 50 hours in the car with my 2 kids. Wow. So just in camping, learning how to camp. I went and got a wilderness first responder, certificate, so I can, if something bad happens, I know how to take care of my kids out in the woods. If we're camping or hiking or something. And it just kind of took on a life of, I joined a search and rescue team. That's how all this stuff kind of progressed. And then I wanted to do, again, going back to Chuck, it's like, man, I want to do a triathlon. I got a bike. I started biking a little bit. Swimming is terrible. I hate it, but still to this day, but I just got in the pool, just started swimming a little bit. I got a coach and I did a little baby sprint triathlon earlier this year. I did an Olympic triathlon in August of 22. And then in late September, I just did the full Ironman. So it just kind of progressed from there. And, it's, you mentioned, addiction. I think that, I think a better word, it maybe, but I think a better word is habit. It's become one of those things that, you're talking about somebody, I hadn't worked out. I hadn't done a workout in almost 17 years. Okay. That's a long time. That's going from, college, 23, 24 years old to 40. Not doing anything. Just, I live in, I'm active, like doing the business I'm in, but not to actually work out. So you're sitting here talking about creating a habit. A habit, I think, is something that you do, something that if you don't do it, you're like, you crave it, or you're like upset that you didn't do it.
Yeah.
So like getting up in the morning and not doing a workout, like, cause I have to taper. I have to have rest days. My rest days, I'm antsy. I'm climbing the walls because like, maybe it is an addiction, but but if it is, I'd rather have that addiction than something that's more toxic. It doesn't take away time from my kids. I don't sacrifice any time away from my kids. It doesn't take away time from my business. As a matter of fact, when I have my kids, I'm a full-time dad. I don't use babysitters. I am 100% full-time stay-at-home dad when I have my kids. When I don't have my kids is when I do a lot of this extreme stuff, and I take my workouts to the extreme. I'll do 4 days, 3 a day. Yesterday is 4 a day. Today's a 3 a day. It's just like, it's what I do.
Awesome.
It's what I love.
And so go ahead, Peter.
So I got a question for you, because one of the things that you were talking about now with the triathlon, right? There was biking, there was swimming, and then there was running, right? One of those things that you said, the swimming, you hate doing it, and you still do to this day. So how you do something that you hate doing? How you keep doing that?
Oh, Peter, that's the big $1 million question. That is mental toughness. 100% that's mental. That's a mind game. It's all a mind game. And every time in the pool, I tell myself that. And I've quit. I'm just being honest with you. Mm-hmm. I was in the pool. I've been swimming, hired a coach, the whole nine. I've never been scared of the water. I've always kind of like gone swimming, like go to a lake or be in a pool with your kids. So I've gone swimming, but to actually like swim with form and doing laps and just getting in a lake and swimming from one end of the lake to the other and back, like miles. You're talking about miles. I'm in great shape, but it's a different kind of conditioning. So to this day, this is just earlier this week, Monday of this week, I got in the pool. I did like 500 yards, which is down and back on a 25-yard pool. It's down and back 10 times. Mm-hmm. Just did 5. I was supposed to do 1,000. I was supposed to do 1,200 yards. I did 500. I quit. I got out of the pool. I quit. I texted my coach. I quit. I'm not swimming anymore. I'm done.
Curious what he said.
Why'd I pay him? I pay him so you can kick my butt, right? But and I'm like, I'm sorry. And he's like, listen, don't apologize to me. You apologize to yourself. You're the one that has these goals. You're the one that wants to be an Ultraman. You mentioned that earlier. I'm training now for an Ultraman. You're the one that wants to be an Ultraman. You got to do a 5.5 mile swim. So you're sitting there talking about, wow, you can't even do 1,200 yards. 1,200 yards is not even a mile. So you can't even do 1,200 yard swim. And you're about to do a 5.5 mile swim. I mean, you need to start getting real with yourself. Yeah. So how do you do it? You got to have mental toughness. You've got to have mental toughness. You have to. What I've learned is if you hate it, you better start. That's the big clue right there. Start doing that. Putting yourself in positions to where you're uncomfortable. And I'm talking about things that you need to be doing, not things that you shouldn't be doing. But if it's something you need to do and you're not doing it or you don't want to do it, then you need to do it twice. Put it on your calendar, do it twice. And it's hard. And it's a mind game. It's all a mind game. All of life is a mind game.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, for me personally, I need to start hanging out with Vojo more.
Yeah.
If you need to do it and you don't want to do it.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to.
You beat me to it, bro. I had like 5 things ready to say about you. That's fine.
Dude, that's why you got to be quick on this stuff.
Yeah, you do this. Yeah, you got to be quick on the podcast. So, dude, I'm curious though, so what is the Ultraman, by the way? Describe that for our listeners.
Ultraman is, just real quick, it's about a little bit more than a double Ironman.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's about a 5.5 mile swim. It's almost a 300-mile bike, and then it's a double marathon, a 52-mile run.
That's insane, bro. That's awesome, man. Wow. That is awesome. And so, I'm imagining, like, what does it take for training to get to that level in terms of like, are you looking at months or years? And like, I mean, what is it actually? I mean, because you can't just wing it, right? You might be able to wing a mini or something like that, but you're not going to wing this.
Yeah. I guess I can only, I'm brand new to triathlon, so I can just speak on my experience. I am, because of hiking, I am naturally really good on the bike. It's a lot of the same muscles, glute strength, hamstrings, quads. So it's a lot of the same muscles. So I was naturally just really good on the bike. And I'd been running for about 1.5 years and had built up my running stamina pretty good. It was, for me, it was the swim that has taken the most, and I'm still not. I'm terrible in the water. Like, if you look at my times, just for comparison, or to give you some context, I should say, in the Ironman I just did a couple of months ago, I finished 999th out of 1,064 men in the swim. So almost dead last in the swim, but I did it. Did finish about middle of the pack in the bike. and I finished in the top third on the run. And I ended up finishing about middle of the pack for the whole thing. A little bit, I think it was about the 48th percentile, something like that. So basically the middle of the pack. How long does it take to get there? For me, it took from the moment I ran that first mile, which would have been in February of 2020, to the Ironman was September of 22. So that's 2.5 years. I wasn't training for an Ironman that whole time, by the way, but it took me 2.5 years to kind of get to that point. And by the way, my goal for the Ironman was just to finish it. And I was way overtrained to just finish it. I ended up finishing just over 13 hours. You get 16 and a half hours to do it is the cutoff time. And I was middle of the pack. If I was just trained up enough just to finish, I wouldn't have finished middle of the pack. I would have finished in the back of the pack. So I was overtrained to just finish. Well, now it's like, well, man, if I did that good and I really didn't train that consistently or that hard, what can I do if I really try to do it? So I'm going to go back next year. I'm going to do another Ironman September of 23. And then the Ultraman is going to be January of 24. So I'm from this point, I'm about a year out from the Ultraman, but it's just a slow progression. I'm, like I said, when I don't have my kids, I'm working out, 3 to 4 different workouts a day, which equates to about two-ish, depending on what I'm doing, 2-ish hours on average per day.
Wow, man. Got it. Well, I mean, so it's 2 hours total, or each workout's 2 hours?
No, total.
Okay.
And that's, every other weekend I'm going to do something big. So every other weekend I'm going to do either a long bike, a long run, or a long bike run.
Got it.
One of the two. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, man, as you've progressed down this road of physical fitness, have you seen or even thought of the transfer of any skills? Or, I mean, you mentioned the mindset stuff earlier, as far as like you're more, I guess, relaxed and you don't get as emotional and you respond to things better with more thought, and it's quick to jump the gun. Have you noticed any other kind of things that have translated into other areas of your life?
Really just being present, being in the moment. Like when you're working out, you can't, you're when you start looking ahead even 5 minutes, you're in trouble. That's when you get in trouble. It's just, for me, it's always been about presence. With my kids, when I'm with my kids, this phone that happens to be next to me right now is turned on silent, and it's not even in the same room. Like everything stops. Like I am present. Reading, I've read The Power of Now a long time ago, and I've read it a couple of times since. Eckhart Tolle. It's a great reminder that there's no such thing as the future. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as the past. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is right here, right now, this moment. To be thinking about what might happen in the future, or to be thinking about what did happen in the past, is not going to help you right here in this moment, right here, right now. It's not going to help you be present. And just being ultra present, like right now with this interview, right? That's what's happening right now is, Jason, how can I serve you? Peter, how can I serve you and your audience right now? It's all I'm thinking about right now. My phone is like turned the other way. Even though it's right here, it's turned the other way. I'm not, like, my focus is here. My attention's here. Because what good is it going to do for me to be thinking about all the things that I have to do after this right now? It's going to make it for a terrible interview.
Right.
So listen, I got presence.
Yeah. Cool, I love that, man. That's a great answer, man. Because that's what we talk about a lot at the events, and even on this podcast, right? Being present is huge. So I have a couple of questions for you. Now that you went through all the stuff that you went through up to this particular point, if somebody on this podcast is listening who is this person who's, getting, like you were talking about, your example was, I did, all these travels when I was married, right? Traveling all over the world and all over the place. And, I was saying I'm doing it for my family, when in reality, when you said the calendar and my bank account wasn't showing that I was doing that really for my family or something else. somebody is in that kind of a position and is listening to you right now, what would you say to them?
It's tough because I don't know, because the roles were reversed at one point. There was someone in my life that knew me well enough to be able to speak into my life and tell me hard things. And they told me all the things that they wish someone had told them.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't do any good for me. So I don't know, Peter. Like, I don't know. I don't think that it has to be that way. Something tells me deep down it doesn't have to be that way, but I feel like it has to be that way. I feel like you have to get your ass kicked in order to wake up. I coached Division I college basketball, and when I was at UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham, there was a coach there, Mike Davis. He used to tell his players that people don't change. You are who you are. They don't change. People don't change. The only way, and this is what he said, and again, I don't know if I agree with this. I don't even know if he's right, but it makes a lot of sense with my experience. The only way that people can change is if they go through trauma. And I don't think it has to be that way, but for me, it had to be that way, unfortunately. Yeah. So I'm not sitting here wishing that on anybody. Hopefully somebody who's listening to this is going to start taking things a little bit more seriously. I mean, here's the thing. I think that since all that stuff happened with me, I can see it so clearly in other people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to have a couple of conversations with some of those people, and it never ends well. So I've tried to change the delivery, doesn't end well. So it's like, I don't know. Peter, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help other people. Hopefully, God can give me a vision for that. But I think it comes back to people are going to have to hopefully not, lose everything, but hopefully get kicked enough to where it wakes them up before the worst happens.
Yeah. And I think what you just said, I think is probably important, because what I heard from this is that person, just listen. Because I don't think we're listening, like hearing what is going on around us, what people are telling us.
Peter, I don't think that people think that it can ever happen to them.
Right.
That's true. That people who are in it, and my wife loves me, my kids love, I'm at home, that can't, I'm not Brian. Yeah, that's not going to happen to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I think.
I get it. All right. So my follow-up question to that is, someone who had something, traumatic happen, right? And they're in that place where their whole life just basically going to fall apart. And they're in that place right now. What would you say to them?
Get around people, which is so hard for me to do. It's entrepreneurs, people who are in the public eye, even a little bit, a lot of times feel like nobody can understand. Like, Peter, you're not going to go to someone with your issues who can't understand not just the issue. A lot of people probably deal with the same issues, but dealing with an issue that you might have in the position that you hold, because it's different. So get around people, people who you respect. And, for me, I called Jason Medley, who runs the Collective Genius. I called Steve Cook, or talked to Steve Cook, so, and I can name some other. I called people who, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but I needed to hear stuff from people who had gone through what I'd gone through, and they did it while kind of in the public eye a little bit. I needed to hear that from those. So get around people because you can't be on an island. If you're on an island, it's just everything's gonna collapse on you. I think that's probably number one. And you can insert, I don't know what kind of show this is. I don't want to, but you could go to church, whatever your religion is, whatever get around people just get around people, really is what it comes down to. Get in a small group of people who you respect. And I think that's going to be the big thing. People. Because you're on an island, you're so vulnerable and so susceptible to doing something really stupid. And we're all one tiny step away from doing stupid things.
Dude, man, thank you so much for that, Bri. I really appreciate you being on. And, I think you give a lot of hope to people who are struggling or in multiple different areas. Maybe they haven't gone through the trauma, but they want to start. They have something else going on in their life that they want to start getting healthier, or they have issues with, some other aspect of life that now they can have hope and encouragement that, there is another side to this, and it can be a positive side. It doesn't have to be a negative side, destructive side, and one that they're going to regret, man. So, dude, thanks for being on the Life Inner Show, brother.
Appreciate y'all.
Dude, Ultraman. I mean, that sounds pretty wild. You should do it.
Yeah,
you're
I've
right
done
there,
it.
dude. You're already in shape. You're already in that kind of shape. You could. I
will tell you this: ultra marathon. I've already done it. You know how? In my sleep.
In your sleep, yes. That's probably the only way that's ever going to happen.
I woke up and that was it.
And you were tired.
When he was sharing the numbers, right?
Dude,
like he's talking about, was it biking like 300 miles? I'm like,
well,
that's like me going from Detroit to Michigan to Chicago almost.
Dude, Detroit to Michigan, that you're okay.
From Detroit to Chicago almost.
Yeah, okay. Dude, it's it strikes me as like I wanted to get him on the show because like he's really I knew his progression only through Facebook, and I saw these incredible things. It started with these hikes, and he's taking all his pictures and traveling all over the country. And then it progressed to the Ironman, and I'm like, wow, like where did this come from? And I think there's so much to learn from this, man. Like number one big thing I got out of this is like, hey, number one, everyone I think in life goes through traumatic events. Now, some of them are our fault, and some of them aren't, right? Yeah. And I did think it was interesting that he said he had to kind of probably he had to learn the hard way, right? And I think that is true for somebody. You'll keep eating crap food until you have a heart attack, and then that changes like your belief, and you'll think it never will happen to you. But more than that, what he did in response to that traumatic event, and he's referring to his divorce in this case, was he chose something that was gonna kind of be a positive in his life rather than a negative. Like instead of going down the road of starting to drink or hang out at the bars or just plop down on the couch and just watch movies and eat bonbons, like he chose to get up and do something, and it's progressed, and it's been really cool to see that.
Yeah, and I think what's important to realize in that particular conversation, and this is sometimes hard for me to have those types of conversation with my students because some of them go through hard times, right? But the important thing here to notice is he chose. We have an ability to choose in those moments, you know, and he chose to not go and do the negative. He chose to go and do the quote unquote the positive, right? So we have that choice. I'm thinking about it. We make choices every single day. Right now, I could be sitting here as we're doing the interviews, drink whatever, or I can be drinking water, right? We have the choice. We choose to what we do every single day. And when you start looking from that perspective, all of a sudden, and then like things like that happen, the traumatic, all of a sudden his shoulds became a must, and he starts making different things happen in his life. I'm excited for what he's going to be doing in the future now.
Well, man, the other thing that struck me is like it wasn't even like deliberately. And this is funny because we recently had an interview with Clayton Mask, the CEO of Keep, and I had asked a question like, "Hey, did you see the potential for what Keep could become?" When you first started, and he said, "No, not at all. Like we were just we're in the weeds. We're just trying to survive." And Brian, when he started his hikes and everything else, I don't think he had any aspirations of an Ironman. It kind of just gradually became more and more appealing to him. And so I think that's encouraging for a lot of people. Like, you don't have to just go out. You don't just go out and want to do this huge thing. And, we talk about this a lot, Peter, like, at the Get a Life Getaway, I'll say, like, there's two ways to climb a mountain. One is looking at the peak the whole time, which is going to be the most painful, the hardest, the most depressing, overwhelming way to do it. Or you can look, 10 feet in front of you, where you have to move those 10 steps, and then you get there and you look another 10 steps forward. And so I think it's encouraging to people who maybe you're not in the shape you want, or maybe you can't see a life outside of your current situation because you're so in the weeds. And I just want to encourage you. It's the small stuff. It's the things in the right direction, the steps, like, going out for a mile run or trying to do a mile run, right? Like, that's where it starts.
Yeah. And he mentioned in the episode of just one day at a time.
Yeah.
When you have these big, audacious kind of goals, and you put them out there and you want to achieve this, it literally takes, one step at a time.
Yeah.
And then day later, months later, years later, you're going to look back and like, look how much I've accomplished. But what ends up happening, a lot of people keep staring on that top of the mountain, like you said, and they never take a step.
They're paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just one step at a time.
Well, the other thing, man, the real big takeaway for me is just like the value of consistent growth and preparation. And, he's doing this ultra. And so that's going to take, he's got over a year of training to do that as well. So it's like, you just, and especially if you enjoy it, if you're maybe, well, he doesn't enjoy all of it. Like, clearly the swimming was something that he didn't say he enjoyed, but it's something that almost anything is achievable with enough time, right? If you're moving in the right direction. Right.
And the other big takeaway I had from this is, and this is for anybody who's going through a tough time, man, get yourself around people. Create a community for yourself. Talk to people. Surround yourself with people. Like, he, has a coach. That's another important aspect. I know that gurus, quote unquote, talk about it. You need a coach. How important it is. What's that?
What'd you say?
Gurus.
Goose?
Guru, the guy, the guru.
You mean, guru?
You know what?
Okay,
3,
wow.
2, 1,
you need an English coach, bro.
Who the heck is bothering me right now?
You need an English coach.
Yeah, we're past that. There is no fixing that. Well, listen, but people talk about it. Like, you need a coach, and it's so important. And surround yourself with the people who you want to, be kind of a thing, right? Because those people are going to pull you up. They're going to, challenge you to go and get to them. You're going to look at them like, I want to be more, get to that, especially when you go into a tough time.
Totally, man. Totally. Great point. All right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We got to wrap it up. Leave us a review, leave us a rating, give us a thumbs up. Tell everyone you can think about us. Tell your neighbor, your dog, your mom, your coworker. We need all the listens we can get. And get out there, get it, make awesome things happen. We'll see you next week. Take care.